Welcome everyone to the 17 Days of Sustainability discussion sponsored by Adiogen. It's really great to join you once again. I'm Peggy Pelonis, president of the American Community School of Athens and chair of Adiogen Athens. As I said, it's great joining you once again as we convene with leaders across the world to raise awareness about the world's most vexing issues and to share the stories of those whose mission is to accelerate the goals towards a sustainable world. Indeed, what would the world be like without people such as our guest, whose life work it is to make sure that life and living on the planet improves daily? We have with us today Dr. Ephraim Isaac. Dr. Isaac is widely known in Ethiopia as founder of the National Literacy Campaign that made millions literate in the late 60s. With multiple degrees from Harvard and also having taught at Harvard, he's one of the founders of Harvard's Afro-American Studies department. The department has endowed Harvard's Ephraim Isaac Prize for Excellency in African Studies. In addition to the numerous articles and books he has authored, he also speaks 17 languages. Currently, in Amsterdam, in an art exhibition, the Biennale, Dr. Isaac's head sculpture stands among 100 influential people whose head sculpture is displayed in this exhibition that speaks to the idea of artists contributing to a better society. He's been decorated, knighted by His Majesty the King of Sweden as an Order of the Polar Star, first class, for lifetime service to peace and justice. He's the first recipient of the Morton Deutsch Conflict Resolution Award of the American Psychological Association, and he's widely acclaimed as a public lecturer on religion, literature, ancient history, peace, and conflict resolution. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you very much, Dr. Peggy.
Let's just go right into the first question. Now, you founded the Ad Hoc Peace Committee for Peace and Reconciliation among all Ethiopian conflict parties, and at a critical stage, you negotiated the release of 30 Ethiopian political leaders and members of parliament. And since 2007 to date, you also negotiated the release of about 35,000 prisoners. Your work towards peace has been a lifetime work. What led you to this work, and do you believe that we, as a species, have made progress towards achieving peace?
Thank you very much for the question. Peace has been central in my life since my childhood. When I was about 3 years old, the Italian army was fighting with the British army that had entered Western Ethiopia to overcome the Italian occupation of Ethiopia. I never forgot 2 nights when my family dug a hole and we sat inside the hole for 2 nights and listening to the sound of machine guns, bombs, artillery. It was like a heavy rain. And I do remember also leaving my little town for 2 weeks, almost like a refugee, leaving the town where there was fighting. So that left an impression on me. When I came back home after 2 months, I asked for one of my playmates called Desta. And I said, can I play with Desta? They said, no, a bomb exploded and he got killed. And I said, when is he coming back? I didn't know at 3 when they said a bomb killed him. So I insisted he come back. So that left an impression on my life from my childhood that fighting, warring is a terrible thing. It's disastrous. And then, as I, of course, grew up, this impression never left me. And when I was in high school, I was actually known as a peacemaker. When students used to fight, I used to run and try to separate them. So peace has been so central in my life. And hence, when I read the Bible, and I'm also a student of the Bible, and I saw how much peace has a very important place in religious thought, it again impressed on me much more. All my life, I had always hated fighting. I never hit a single person in elementary school or high school. And so, for me, you are happier, your life is fuller when you are at peace with yourself, and then when you try to make peace with all your neighbors. So I was inspired by the concept of peace. Now, I'm also a student of Jewish literature. In many places, it says the world stands on three pillars: on peace, love, and justice. And peace is a stronger pillar, because if that pillar falls, we cannot even talk about love and justice. So, hence, when the war began in Ethiopia in the 60s, I started writing letters to all the warring factions. Why can you not make peace? And so, eventually, after almost a 50-year civil war in Ethiopia, in which thousands and thousands of people were killed, and there was a famine which ate up almost 1 million people because of the fighting, a group of Ethiopian educated, serious persons approached me and said, well, you'll be working with a literacy campaign. Many people in Ethiopia know you, and you're, in all due humility, they said you're respected. So we want you to start a peace process. And they appointed me, together with two other people, to chair the Ethiopian Peace Committee. It's called Ad Hoc Peace Committee in 1989, and they asked me to be the chair of the three. So since 1989 until 1991, I started corresponding with all the warring factions. Many of them were in Europe or in Sudan, and these were like the Derg government, the government of Ethiopia, EPRDF, which was the major Ethiopian fighting faction, and the Eritrean Liberation Front. And I am most grateful to all of them because they accepted us right at the very beginning. In fact, when I wrote a letter to them saying, why can't we, all of us, fighting factions, sit down together? I focused on the fact that the majority of the people of Ethiopia are very kind people, very gentle people, very respectful people. I pointed out to them that during the time when I was in high school, I was a translator for my American teachers, and I traveled all over Ethiopia. Then in the 60s, I had traveled in Ethiopia when I was running the literacy campaign. And I said, everywhere I went, in the villages, people never asked me what tribe I was, what political party I belonged to. Instead, they said, you must have come a long way. You must be tired. Please come in and have coffee or a meal. That's the attitude of the majority of the Ethiopian people. So I impressed upon these people that a minority elite, which are less than even 5% of the people of Ethiopia, were the ones who are fighting with each other, destroying the country. And I must say, I was very pleased that the chairman of the EPRDF, called Atomeles Zenawi, was one of the first people who responded immediately, saying, the idea is welcome. We are willing to sit down with the elders of Ethiopia. So we formed a group of elders of about a dozen people. We approached the Swedish government for assistance, and the Swedish government, the Life and Peace Institute, gave us assistance. And so we started dialoguing. And in 1991, when the major fighting faction, the EPRDF, Ethiopian People's Revolutionary Democratic Front, entered Addis, we were invited. And we had raised money from the Swedish government to bring all these political factions together. And they were going to meet in Addis Ababa to form a new government, a transitional government. And I'm very happy to say with the funds we got from Norway and Sweden, we were able to sponsor that meeting. It was called Peace and Democratic Transition, which we sponsored, and a new government was formed as a transitional government in 1991. Thereafter, the organization and all the other political party groups that were fighting with each other were very kind to us and said, well, we have now made peace, but peace is a plant. It needs to grow. It needs sunshine. It needs rain. So why are you people leaving? I said, well, because we finished our work. They said, well, not yet. So we decided to form, instead of ad hoc peace committee, which was during the war, the name of our organization, a peace organization, we started a group called Peace and Development Center. And we were very happy that we became the first peace organization that was national, founded in Ethiopia. And now the organization is about 35 years old, and we have celebrated our 25th anniversary, our 30th anniversary. I hope if the COVID allows us, we'll also celebrate the 35th anniversary. And I'm very pleased. You already mentioned that our organization has been instrumental in sponsoring that 1991 meeting, that when the transitional government was formed. And then subsequently, when a clash continued between the government and varieties of political parties, and many people were sent to jail, we were then called back, and we participated in trying to negotiate between the government and especially the opposition political parties. Many of them were sent to jail. And in the year it was the Ethiopian year 1997, we were able to get out of Ethiopian jail all the political party leaders, members of parliament, doctors, professors, and this was a tremendous impression on my life. Let me go back a little bit and also point out that our organization from the time 1991 until that never actually stopped to dialogue with the government and opposition political parties to try to stop them fighting. And in 1998, a war broke out between Ethiopia and Eritrea, and our group was the only national group accepted by two parties. So I shuttled with a group of my colleagues from Addis Ababa to Asmara 3-4 times, trying to stop that fighting. And it was a very tragic experience. And thereafter, of course, now I've already mentioned about what happened during the time when the political party leaders were imprisoned. So we continue. And today there is a big conflict going on in Ethiopia. And I myself, right now, if I look sleepy because of that conflict, I've been sleepless. And I'm working with a couple dozen of my friends daily and with former ambassadors from around the world to try to see what we can do to stop the bloody conflict in which now almost 400,000 people are said to have been killed in the last year.
Thank you for that. Peace is such a noble work, lifetime work, but you're also very active professor in education, and you're the chair of the Committee for Ethiopian Literacy. Where does the work towards literacy in Ethiopia stand today? And how do you see your work continuing by others who perhaps would like to follow in your footsteps?
Thank you very much. In as much as peace has been a central theme in my life, education has also been a very important pillar in my own life. From my childhood, when I was very lucky, a group of Swedes came to my town and started a school. I was, in all due humility, probably I got number one almost and through grade 8, and they helped me to go to high school. And I always loved learning new languages. You see, that is related actually to my commitment to peace. A lot of people waste their time fighting with each other or running after money or power. I've always, as a peacemaker, also loved learning, trying to understand different peoples and different cultures. I studied many of these languages because I appreciate the language of other people. To me, sound like music. They sound like beautiful music. Some people hate each other because of diversity. I hate diversity. Like right behind me now, you see some red colors, green color, yellow color. That makes it beautiful. So for me to study these different languages and also to learn about science and about religion has been a central theme in my life. And hence, when I finished elementary school, my Swedish teachers, because I guess in all due humility, they thought I was their best student. They sent me to Addis Ababa. I finished grade 12, Emperor Haile Selassie Secondary School. And when I graduated from there, I also received the Emperor Haile Selassie's Prize for being the best student in my class. And, and then I studied a couple of years at the University College, after which, during that time, I became very interested in music. And I also believe that's another thing that enriches people's life, good music. And so I contacted a choir. And the American ambassador at that time had come to a couple of my concerts and said, well, you should go and study music. So I ended up studying music for 2 years in Minnesota. And thereafter, when I went back to Ethiopia, I translated Handel's Messiah into Amharic and performed it in front of the emperor. But then I decided that in a poor country like Ethiopia, I love music. Music is still one of the things I love. I mean, good music, classical music and traditional music, folk music. I said to myself that I cannot do much for the poor people of Ethiopia by focusing on classical music. So that's why I moved more towards the study of religion and went to Harvard Divinity School, got my first degree, and then continued at Harvard University, where I received my Ph.D. in the study of Semitic languages and literature. By the way, I know you're calling me from Athens. I took also 7 years of classical Greek studies, read a little bit of Plato in Greek, and read a little bit of Demosthenes and Thucydides. Of course, I was focusing on Semitic languages, but I studied Greek also. So learning, knowledge, education has been another pillar in my life. I'm just following what the great rabbis taught. The world stands on 3 pillars: on peace, love, and knowledge, and truth. Well, what I would say is, for me, in as much as I've always been very committed, almost blindly, to peace, I am also committed to education. And after I came to Harvard and I started, seeing many books about Ethiopian history and Ethiopian culture and the riches, I reflected upon the fact that the majority of the people of Ethiopia were illiterate. And so in 1960, the year I translated Handel's Messiah and performed in front of Ethiopian emperor and ministers and ambassadors, I met with a group of people who said, why don't we start our own literacy campaign? Because the government was paying for elementary schools, high schools. They're not doing very much. About the majority, 95% of the people were illiterate. So I was very lucky to become a member of that board. And when I came to America, we organized, at that time, I was president of the Ethiopian Student Association in 1960, 61, 62. And I said, this political student movement is just talking politics. So why don't we start our own committee for Ethiopian literacy? And I'm very happy to tell you that we became the first African organization to get a United States tax-exempt status. And the Committee for Ethiopian Literacy raised almost from about $1 million from 1962 through 1971. And while I was a graduate student at Harvard, I was shuttling back almost every Christmas, every Easter, every break, trying to inspire my colleagues who were students of university and others to volunteer to teach people. So I am very pleased to tell you that if you look at Ethiopian newspapers of the 60s until 1973, is a lot of story how the Ethiopian literacy campaign had contributed to almost making 3 million people, 2.5 million people literate. This was based all on volunteer work. We're all sacrificing our time, our resources, and I'm very happy to say once we got the tax exempt status, we were able to organize like dinners in American colleges, and we were able to organize fundraising programs and raise a large amount of money. And as I said, I'm very pleased to tell you that I think in 1963, when we got tax exemption, we were the first African organization. Today, there are a lot of African organizations in America that are tax exempt and are doing varieties of good work. I
You
don't
know,
know.
and you are the perfect role model because you are so, your education is so broad and so deep at the same time. And so I want to, because there's so many aspects to your work that are so important, I want to make sure that we touch on all of them a little bit. And so I want to move to another question. In the 1980s, you were an active member of the Harvard Radcliffe Alumni Association Against Apartheid. You were also nominated twice to the Harvard University Board of Overseers on an anti-apartheid slate. How has this work evolved today? Where's that today?
Oh, thank you very, very much. You are very kind. Thank you for your kind words and for your question again. Yes, again, as I said, peace was central in my life, education. But as I said before, the world stands on peace, love, and justice. I always believed in justice also. One of the things in which I got involved when I was a graduate student, a student at the Divinity School in Harvard, was working with civil rights uh, organizations. Uh, they, in my dormitory, the leader of SNCC, at that student non-violence coordinating committee, was like next door to me, and I became involved in a peaceful way. Again, I am a peacemaker. As long as we can talk and dialogue to fight against discrimination and apartheid and all of those things, I'm willing to do it. But I will never raise my hand to throw a stone, but I can use my mind, my knowledge. So I got involved in the African and African American Students Association, which was the first African and Black American organization in the United States at Harvard University. And we dialogued about the problems of what it means to be African, African American. The fact, like when I came to Harvard, there were about 16 Black students in the university, 16. By the late 60s, after, of course, a lot of student uprising and struggle, and Martin Luther King was killed, and the university all of a sudden got shamed into the fact that Harvard, a great university that had was teaching all the languages of Europe, did not have even a single language of Africa. Nothing about African ancient culture, nothing about African religions, nothing. So in 1969, there was a large student movement against apartheid and against the Vietnam War. And the faculty met and established the Department of African and Afro-American Studies. And it just happened that that year I had finished my doctorate, 1969. And so the committee that was created to now set up a new department of African and African American Studies approached me and said, look, we're looking for professors in the field of Black studies, African studies. We couldn't find many people. You just finished your doctorate. We'd like to offer you a position. At the time, I said, no, I want to go back to Ethiopia. But one of my professors, George Williams, professor of church history, great man, And he said, look, Ephraim, you can always go back to Ethiopia. I think this is important. So I became the first person hired to teach in the Department of African and African American Studies at Harvard. And naturally, of course, students loved the courses I gave on Black civilization, on African languages and African religions. And some of those students were also involved in the struggle against apartheid. I remember one of the founders of the strong African apartheid movement coming to my room, trying to raise money when I was already teaching at Harvard. And so when the movement grew against apartheid on campus, and they were trying to pressure the university to divest, a group of Harvard alumni formed an organization called Harvard Radcliffe Alumni Against Apartheid. And they asked me to be a member of the board. And I said, fine. And then they nominated me to the board of overseers. So I became like two alumni who were nominated to the Harvard Board of Overseers. And I'm very proud of the fact that I played a role in that organization called Harvard Radcliffe Alumni Against Apartheid. So this is all interrelated with my knowledge in the 60s that Africa had no role in the university and that we had to do something about the study of African civilizations, and also my commitment to contribute to education at Harvard, to the study of the cultures of Black people. And then the struggle, the respectful, peaceful, I'm always a peaceful struggler. I'm not a violent person, working with the students against the apartheid in South Africa. And I'm very proud for having been nominated by the Harvard Radcliffe Alumni Against Apartheid to the Harvard Board of Overseers.
Yes, and indeed, that's an honor, and it sounds like you're a trailblazer in a lot of different ways. I want to come. The background is incredibly rich, incredibly, multicultural with all the languages that you speak and so on and so forth. I don't know how anybody learns 17 languages, but that's amazing. But I want to bring our discussion to today. We here in the school that I lead, I believe in developing mindsets of active, conscious citizenship at young ages, so that young people position themselves to lead and navigate change rather than to be the victims of change. Do you think that young people today are able and willing to work towards improving life and living on the planet, such as you have done for so many years?
Of Christo, thank you. I would say it's a very good question, an excellent question. Indeed, it is the young people who can make a difference. And I think there are a lot of young, positive-minded people. There are some young people who are negative-minded. Fortunately, they're a minority. I do believe, and that is why I believe in education, because education, especially when you're young, and what's impressed upon you, the love of knowledge, the love of service, the love of your fellow human beings. This is impressed upon us from our childhood. As I explained before, my own commitment to peace, to education, goes back to my early childhood, my childhood experiences. It is young people throughout the world today whom we have to inspire, whom we have to educate, to open their eyes that they have a tremendously important role in making this world a better place. We live today in a world in which there is poverty, disease, illiteracy, especially in Africa, in Asia, and even in some parts of the other developed countries. And unless we inspire young people who have the energy and who have the time and the knowledge to commit themselves to learning on the one hand, and then interpreting that knowledge into action. I also love this Jewish saying which says the world also stands on two legs: learning and action. Learning and action. We have to learn, but just to learn is not enough. We have to act. We have to do something. We can make the world a better place if we open our eyes. Let's say each one of us knows that we love drinking water, we love eating food, fruits, and others. What about our fellow human beings? Don't they like drinking water? Don't they like eating apples, oranges? Don't they like a family, a house, a home? It's unfortunate that we live today in a world in which the majority of people, especially in my country of Ethiopia, the majority of the people are completely under stress because they don't have houses, they don't have enough food, they don't have. That is why I'm working for peace, because without peace, we cannot also do the work that we need to do. The farmers cannot farm. When there is fighting now in Ethiopia, what are the farmers doing? They're running away, and that will lead to famine. So, younger people, we really need to inspire younger people to start, because unless we start thinking positively when we are young, when we grow up also, we cannot think positively. Unless we are inspired, the Bible says the beginning of knowledge is the fear of God. And unless we teach younger people, stop being egotistic, selfish, just thinking for yourself, learn to serve other people, learn to work for peace, for bread for the world. And that way, we can all have a better world.
And that also contributes to a lot of inner satisfaction when you serve other people, when you do better for the planet, when you do improve life, your own life, and the life of others. It also contributes to internal satisfaction and really takes us away from that idea of being so egocentric, because ultimately that's a pretty lonely place to be, to always about me. We are social beings, and we do need others to be able to survive in this world and to have relationships. So, along those lines, Professor, what do you believe that education should entail in order to develop such active, conscious citizens in the world? I mean, I think that as adult, our generation kind of messed things up with the planet, and so we have a tendency to tell young children, now you have to fix it. But I think we need to guide young children, or children in general, the younger generation. What do you think education should entail so that we develop such mindsets that are not egocentric, but rather consider the well-being, holistically, and the well-being of others and the well-being of the planet?
What you said is beautiful. Thank you very much. Yes, education, as I said, is one of the pillars in which the world is really founded. However, education has to be also interpreted into action. What's happening is sometimes people use their education for their own egotistic purposes, to just make more money themselves. And I'm sorry, I drank something. They're using education just for their own selfish purposes. What we need to do is to make people appreciate that their life can be richer and fuller, and they can live a happier life if, when they learn, they also share their knowledge, and they also interpret their knowledge into action that will help the world to become a better place where babies grow eating good food, mothers feeding babies good food, and homes live in a good situation without being destroyed by storm or rain, whereby all of us can be happy if we not only have a good life, food, home, and house, where also others will. One of the most terrible thing in this world today is some people who have who have used their knowledge to accumulate money, hoard money, are using that money. It's very unfortunate to do terrible things with it. I know when people have spent a couple $1 million just to have a party. It could be a wedding, a bar mitzvah, or something like that. It shocks me. In a world in which $1 can feed a poor person, people will have these parties of $5 million, or they have taken even much more than that. We read about a lot of people who are using and abusing money. It shocks me. Do these people really have a head on them? Do they really have a mind in which the majority of the people of the world are seek food, shelter, education for their children, and people are using their funds? So all of this really depends on education. Now, it is unfortunate that in many universities, there are many wonderful professors, far-sighted. When I was at Harvard, I had great friends like Stephen Jay Gould, Hilary Putnam, George Wald, who really were great professors. George Wald even had a Nobel Prize. And they spent a good deal of their time really helping international food organizations, working for justice, trying to make the civil rights movement to be a real law in the United States. So there are many, many good people. That's why I'm a positive-minded person. It's unfortunate that the whole world is established in such a way that a minority, let's say 5% of self-seeking, money lovers, they are tearing up the world. And this is, of course, something I have always been puzzled with, that it requires hundreds and thousands of people to build, hundreds and thousands of people to do something good. But it takes 1 or 2 or 3 people to destroy. Just like the World Trade Center was built probably by thousands of people. A lot of millions of dollars were spent on it. Many, many months and days were spent on that. But it took like just a couple of hours to destroy it because of 20 evil people. So what I'm trying to say is we have to watch out, whereby I do believe that the majority of the people of the world are good people. I'm a very positive-minded person. I think human beings are good, basically. But it's unfortunate that they always, this small minority, they don't care whether the world is educated. They don't care whether the world has food. They don't care whether the world has shelters. They don't care when they see all these suffering people. And we need to kind of, I don't know how to do it. It's really a puzzle for me. If you can identify those individuals who want to kill people, like sometimes shoot dozens of people in a school and so on, and then they are so self-centered, they're so egotistic. How can we identify these people? It goes back to childhood education, and I think families have some responsibility so that we can make the world a better place. We have to find out how we to educate, especially those people who have evil intentions, who are out there to go and shoot at people, who are out there to hoard money and just use it for their own personal greed or happiness. I'm raising $1,000 question, and I don't yet have the full answer, but I'm an optimist. I used to be an incorrigible optimist. Now I am no, not an incorrigible optimist, but I'm still an optimist. That I really hope that if good people like you, people who are educating younger people, and others who are committed to bring up younger people with a better vision for a better world tomorrow, then I'm an optimist. We'll do something good in the world.
I agree. I think I agree with you fully that education is the key. And many times it takes a really strong partnership between the schools and the parents and the student. So what I call the golden triangle. I think we, that is can strengthen that message, and raise children, develop children who look out for the good of the planet and each other. But if so, along those lines, in terms of education and especially international education, because we're all here, we're a school that has 63 different nationalities, and you know very well when you bring in such differences under one roof, it's not an easy thing to manage. But on the other hand, that is the beauty, as you said earlier, the diversity, different points of views, perspectives, ideas, beliefs, and so on and so forth. This is the beauty of the world. So, if you had any piece of advice for educators across the globe, particularly in international schools where so many different people come together, what would you say to educators?
That's $1,000 question. I would say, love your children, love your students. Try to inspire in them great, good ideas. It's unfortunate that there are also among teachers, we sometimes have teachers who are short-sighted, teachers who are just doing their job to get their salary. But then the good thing is there are teachers who are really committed to inspire the young people. Good teachers inspire their students. I would say, I'm glad you asked me that question. I was inspired by two teachers. One was my father, who knew the Bible, the Hebrew Bible by heart, and impressed upon me that learning and knowledge is important. The second was a Swedish teacher called Stina Ljungberg. She came from Sweden, and we had a Swedish school in Addis Ababa, in Nejo, where I grew up, and she was really very committed to inspire us. Now, she comes from a faraway country. I was a little kid. She said, why does somebody come from a faraway country to come here and live in this small, primitive village and spend time educating us? So she inspired me how a good teacher is also a dedicated person, no matter how far away you live, to come and try to contribute to the knowledge and education of other people. In a village like that, where not many people were educated, it kind of inspired me. So good teachers are those who are farsighted, who are not only who say, there is a saying in Hebrew Bible and the Talmud, there are four characters in people. One character is a person who says, everything you have is mine, and everything I have is mine. This is an evil person. A good person is one who says, whatever I have is yours, and what you have too is yours. That's the best human being. In other words, there are people and teachers who are like the first type or the second type. I am very happy. The majority are probably the good type. But then again, as I said before, the minority. So we need teachers who are inspirational. I know, I am quite sure you're doing a great job in your school. Indeed, for somebody to search and find a little person like me here in Princeton, you must be a person who is an inspirational teacher. So a good teacher should be dedicated to the best, to give the best education to their children, to students, and love them. Love is also very central. We should love our students. We should dedicate to them. We should pay attention to their pains and pleasures. Some of them have pain, and how to help them. And sometimes those whom we help to overcome their pain are the ones who end up serving other people because they know what they got and they are like to give. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but so my advice is be a good teacher, a loving teacher. Love what you teach and love the people you teach.
Yeah, I completely agree with you that this is not a job that anybody can do if they don't love kids, if they don't love people. And I think love is number one. And also, I believe that there are things that need to be included in education, such as developing an awareness of the issues that are around us and helping, empowering students to position themselves to become problem solvers rather than part of the problem, and to navigate changes as they happen in the world rather than be victims of change. So I agree with you 100%. Now, I always like to end with this question. First of all, what would we do without you, Dr. Ephraim Isaac? With or without you, how is the world? Do you think that what would happen if you were not in this world? Well, how is the world different with you in it? I think you answered a lot of those questions by your life's work. We're honored to know you, but just one final thought that you would like to leave our audience with. You have a legacy here. You have an incredible life legacy. Is that important for people to do work that leaves a legacy behind?
Boy, you're putting a heavy stone on my head. That's $1,000 question. Well, thank you so very, very much for your kindness, for your generosity, and for your good words. Well, I would say that I am a very happy person because of the fact that I've always put human beings ahead of money. I was described in some newspaper as a millionaire, but a cultural millionaire. And I still love that. I think it's maybe in Switzerland, somebody interviewed me and called me a cultural millionaire. So, culture, what is culture? We have to understand human beings are different in many ways. We have something called culture. Culture is where we learn civility, morality, service for others, appreciation of good things, good music, good art, appreciation of other human beings, respecting your parents, your friends, your neighbor, and giving rather than just hoarding. If you just eat, take everything for yourself, you're never a happy person. So service for other people. And my own personal legacy, if the Lord allows me to say it, is that I have really put myself always behind other people's needs in all due humility. When I work for peace, sometimes I lose my money. I spend in my own money, I'm not such a rich person, but whatever I get, when I have helped hundreds of Ethiopian students to go to school, or I've helped quite a few students to come to America on scholarship, not with my own money, sometimes just helping them to get into college. Just this week, I was trying to help one student to come to America to study. So, and what people really ultimately should know is fullness of life, happiness, really depends not only just stuffing your mouth with food for yourself, but some sharing. Because our life, we eat something called happiness too. Happiness, we need to take in happiness. And happiness does not just come by just feeding ourselves, putting all the food into our mouth. For me, happiness comes when I share my apple with you. For me, happiness comes when I give you a little shelter because you are maybe you have no shelter. Giving and receiving. We all are human beings. We have needs, no question. I don't deny that. But at the same time, my own need makes me aware, reflect. I look at the mirror and I said, this guy needs the following. What about the man behind me? What about the person behind me? He's just like me, has two eyes, two ears, two nose, one mouth. Doesn't he have a stomach? Doesn't he have a heart? Is a liver and so on, a kidneys? So I reflect upon the fact that I know I appreciate to eat, I appreciate to study and to think. What about the other person? So when I wish I was a multimillionaire, then I could do some of these things I'm saying to you. That's what I would have done. I would have poured my money into, education for younger people. I could have poured my money into finding shelter for the homeless. And I think united we stand, divided we fall. Humanity, united we stand. Humanity, divided we fall. The egotistic people, ultimately, by the way, that's the very, very interesting thing in life. Usually, I have seen and there is a program that I don't know if I should mention this. I'm not a big television watcher. I just listen to the news. I like to listen to the news. I'm not a very movie person. I don't have time. But occasionally, there are some programs that fascinate me. There is one program called American Greed. I've seen it from time to time, where people who have millions and millions of dollars are also exploiting others, and they're using their millions of dollars to build 10 houses all over the world, to have 2-3 airplanes, and to just for themselves, as though they are going to live for 1,000,000 years.
Yeah.
And so what I'm trying to say is, let's stop greed. Let's stop egotism. Let's stop selfishness. And let us try to be humble. Let us try to learn from each other, respect. And I'll end this. Do unto others what you want done to you. Don't do to others what you don't want to do to you. And that way, you have a full life. Whether you have $1 million or not, if you do good things, you live a good life. You live a happy life. You live a rich life.
Here in Greece, when we toast a drink, we say yasu, which means to your health. So
Exactly.
yasu to this cultural billionaire, Dr. Ephraim Isaac, and thank you so much for joining us here today and sharing so many incredible parts of your story. I'm sure the story is endless, but that you shared, took this time to share some of that with us has been an honor. Thank you, and be well.
Thank you. I apologize if I said anything that offends anybody. And I thank you very much for your wonderful questions. I can see from the questions you're asking that you are also one of the pillars of good people in the world. And may they multiply, people who have good ideas and do good work. Amen. Thank you. Ευχαριστώ παρακαλώ.